Okay, so I guess a better example of what I'm talking about would be daylight savings time.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was created so that the times of the day would be more in sync, and that farmers didn't have to use candles or oil as much
So it
throughout
would
the
be
day.
more like during the fall, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's like when it had its. That's whenever there was a time to leap forward and jump back and
Spring
all
forward,
that stuff, and it
fall
was
back.
because you had to use oil at those times to light.
Okay.
Well, now we have electricity, but we're still using that same formula.
Yes.
And I've seen studies that say that the daylight savings thing, whether it's being reset
Mm-hmm.
or being put into place, it throws people off enough that it really lowers productivity. And I know I've experienced where it's too early to get up, it's too late to go to sleep, and it
Yeah.
really throws me off through the day. And studies are showing that yes, in fact, daylight savings time is now detrimental to us, and it's actually costing the economy money because it's no longer necessary. If we still used candles and oil and things that actually burned away like that individually, then it would still be maybe a net gain,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not anymore. And there are certain states and
I
areas that are
understand
changing
that.
it.
I understand that part.
And it's
you know?
so my thought being is maybe we should review some of our other units of measurement and things that affect society as a whole and see, is there a better way we could do it? The same way we're changing up our energy sources, the way we do food. Let's look at everything. My thoughts are.
Here's a hypothetical question.
Give
Do
me
you
the
think that
hypothetical.
once we get colonies on other planets in the future sometime, like how we're going to manage time then? I mean, is it going to
It's
follow
gonna be
any
really
Earth
difficult
time?
and confusing. They'll have to be aware of Earth time, but they're gonna have their own hours and days just because the cycles are kind of different. Like on
Mhm.
Mars, I know they're a little bit longer or shorter. Is it longer? Yeah, the days are longer. Yeah, the farther out you
Yeah.
get, the longer the day is. So they'll have their own calendars because they'll have to be in sync with the planet that they're on's like cycle. It'll just be like how time zones are different in another country, or like how there's winter in one half of the hemisphere and summer in the other.
Mhm.
Things like that. People will get used to it from their setting.
Okay.
I had a really funny. I was gonna say, could I
What?
answer it with a rhetorical answer? And I was just not gonna say anything and be smug and stare at you. But no, and that's a good question. I mean,
Yeah.
I think on the space station that we have right now, I'm pretty sure they go by the time that the main base is that launches them. So
Okay.
for the longest, Russia, I want to say, I think it was usually America, but from what I understand, I think when they first went up there, people pretty much just slept on cycles. Like some people would be asleep, some people would be awake, and it sort of threw off the dynamic enough having it that way that they then decided to start having all right, we're going to start doing 24-hour cycles for your sleep patterns to
Mhm.
be more in tune, and that helped out a lot because we are set for 24-hour cycles of light and day, or was it light and night? Day and night? Yeah, that's the one. Day and night.
Mm-hmm.
And then to sleep certain hours during the day. And it's hard to sleep when there's activity going on around you. So we have to
Okay.
take our own biological necessities into account whenever we're doing things like that, like setting up shifts for work, and that's another thing. Yeah, we've been talking about recently. We've done, this is, I think, our first podcast we've ever done during the daytime.
During the day recording at
And
day
it
night,
feels
night,
really
yeah.
different. Where I feel a little bit off. Like I'm just not
It
used
does feel off,
the
yeah.
atmosphere around us feels different. The sun's out
It's
more.
more
And
light.
I haven't had like a whole day's work behind me of just like stuff happening and like sort of holding my thoughts in, and I'm able to get them out a lot faster now. But it's like on the other hand, I feel like I don't have as much in my head
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
It's just sort of this the usual stream of me relaxing.
Here, I got a
different.
website up here, sciencefocus.com.
Yeah.
It's talking about the International Space Station. It says that the ISS crews experience a sunset or sunrise every 45 minutes. So new
Wow.
members who arrive on the space station are acclimated.
Acclimatized.
They use acclimatized.
Ooh, fancy.
Acclimated to Kazakhstan time
Oh,
because
wow.
they depart from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Fancy
with so
words.
much scope for chronological confusion, it's no wonder the ISS needs to be locked to a consistent time.
Yeah, okay.
The
yeah.
zone of choice is Coordinated Universal Time, which is equivalent to GMT.
Okay. Yeah, so, I guess my point stands there. We are set
Yeah.
creatures. We are creatures set on a specific time frame. And that brings up the question, too. What about kids who are born on other planets or in the space stations? Like,
That's
will
gonna
they
get
be
tricky,
set?
isn't it?
Yeah, and potential health risks. I know,
Yeah.
like growing up in microgravity can cause the, was it skeleton to develop differently? I believe.
Less
'Cause it's-
dense.
Yeah, less dense bones, and they tend to be a lot taller too,
Mhm.
because of the zero gravity. I know these. There's some people. Whenever you come down from outer space, you're taller. By a few, the longer you're out there, the more
Yeah.
it stretches you out. I think there's a guy who had been like consistently in space for up to a year or two, and he came down and he was like an inch and a half taller.
Really?
And he was an adult, so you're not supposed to be growing then anymore. But it's, I don't know if it's you're stretching out or your body is just naturally doesn't have gravity to hold it down.
I remember heard of some celebrity who wanted to become a cosmonaut, so he went through the training, and by the end of training, he wasn't able to go into space. But by the end of all the training and exercises he did to prepare to go into space, he had shrunk like an inch,
Really?
or half an inch, or something like that.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh, probably like that.
I forgot who.
Was it Justin
which it was.
Timberlake? That sounds right.
It must. Well, I think it was one of the NSYNC guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was him. It was JT, and I don't know, man. It
I
makes
feel
me
like
wonder,
somebody's gonna
is
know
that,
for
is that
sure.
how
They're gonna tell
Slender
us.
Man was made? Like, is he just
Slender
an
Man?
astronaut? Yeah.
The
You know,
unknown. The unknown.
origin.
Origin
He,
of Slender Man.
One of the cosmonauts who got launched into space during the Soviet Union back in the day. Finally he like got around to comets, spun back, and he had to like fold himself out of the pod, and now he's like, I'm all weird and gross. Time to act creepy.
That's gonna be the that's the movie, right? That's the
Yeah, I think so.
Slender Man
That's
movie.
the right.
We gotta make it before somebody else makes
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh man, have you seen any of the Slender Man movies?
There are Slender Man.
There's
movies?
Slender Man movies.
I know there's a documentary, but I know there's an
They
actual Slender Man movie.
it feels like a lot of wasted potential.
Yeah.
It feels like they were other scary movies that sort of decided to throw Slender Man in there.
Uh-huh.
It is such a creepy story. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's so simple too. That's what you gotta like about it. Like a little bit of a simplicity
Mhm.
in the character, and then just play a lot with the story around it. That's what made it interesting, I thought. Oh, anything else? Oh, that was a big leap from like Lucky
That was
Numbers.
a big leap. What do we start off with? The Lucky
Lucky
Numbers.
Numbers.
Yeah.
Not
Do you,
so
do you
lucky
consider any of your numbers like? Do you have personal lucky numbers or
Nah,
personal lucky charms?
I'm too indecisive in general to like say this is my thing that I'm always gonna do. There are times when I'll admit feeling sort of stressed if there's odd patterns and things. I think that's a little bit of OCD. It's just like things look wrong when they're odd,
Yeah.
usually, unless they're centered. Like, you could have like one can with 4 cans behind it, but they have to be like equally distributed or something. And I think it's just the human's natural urge for patterns.
Yeah.
We like seeing patterns distributed a certain way. Otherwise, it just seems kind of odd. And then there's other times, though, where you sort of want that disruption and that asymmetry, and it feels kind of right, too. But it's also still following a pattern. It's just going off fractal patterns instead of...
Well, there's the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah. It's, what is it?
That
The
is
number
the patterns
plus...
in natural
So
world.
it's like 1 plus 2, and then it's like... How does it go?
I forgot the
I know it's like you
mathematical,
add the number,
progression.
the amount of numbers before it, 2, and that becomes a problem, the solution after.
Thank goodness for technology. We have our cell phone here.
Mr. Fibonacci, you confusing guy.
Fibonacci.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I kind of like simple math like that starts becoming more complex the more you do it. I feel like the Fibonacci sequence is more aptly used
It's
used a lot in art. Okay, I've seen that.
The Fibonacci sequence is the
Just
Fibonacci sequence.
so it's like 1, 1, 2, 3, and then so it's like 1 and 1.
Yeah, 1
made
plus
2,
1 is 2.
and
1
then
plus 2, 3.
Yeah.
2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 13, and so on and so
And
forth
then it just
until you
builds
go
up.
into infinity.
Now that's a geometric increase, not a
Yeah.
what was it? They're always saying exponential. In every movie, anytime something's growing, it's growing exponentially, with the exception of Resident Evil. The zombies plague spreads at a geometric rate. Remember the Red Queen in the Hive?
I didn't see all
It'll
those
grow
movies, so I didn't know
It's the first one.
It's the first one?
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've seen
In a
that.
good while, yeah. Man, that is the one that I did not think would keep going for so long.
I'm
How long has it been?
surprised that
But I
you know
guess-
they're rebooting the whole series, right?
Oh no, I did
yes,
not.
they're rebooting the whole series now.
Jeez. And
The,
there's
the
a-
last one didn't it come out like last year?
Are they gonna get her daughter to play her because they look exactly alike? They'll just
And-
have her be the Red Queen.
I think it's a whole hard reboot, so it's gonna be a different. Because the movies didn't follow the game that much, so maybe.
I wonder, maybe I could see them doing still somehow keeping the original trilogy in there by like using clones again, because they did clones, right?
They did.
They brought up clones of the people who died in the first movie.
I just never-
Multiple, like they had multiple
That's how
clones
much I
fighting
don't know
themselves.
about
Yeah.
this.
Oh, and they're just like they went so over the top. You almost gotta admire it. It is insane. They'll have zombies using guns now, and like they'll have Oh man, it's like very inspired by the video game of just it's stylish, lots of style in there. Not a good style, but I think I've seen pretty much all of them except for the very last one.
The last chapter.
Yeah, was that what it's called?
I think that's what it's called, the last chapter.
Which is funny because it's not inspired by books. They should call it the final level. Right?
There you go.
I think so.
Resident Evil, the final level.
Yeah.
Or like how I haven't seen these movies, but you know the Human Centipede. How it's like the subtitles, or it's like the first sequence. No, what? First sequence, full sequence, last sequence, or something like that.
I did not know that. I know they made multiple ones where they basically just add more people to it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I gotta get like I just know like this guy should like run for office because he could clearly sell anything.
I believe his name's Tom Six.
Oh man, like I have this great idea. It's awful. That's why you're gonna like it. Guess what? We're gonna do a sequel. And how's it gonna go? We're gonna add more people to it. That's what it needs.
How do people get money to make movies like that?
In general, I guess they have to pitch to a production company. Like, this is my idea. Does it have a writer in it, or is this just your idea? If there's writers attached.
I heard that Uwe Boll basically like took advantage.
Is that how his name is said?
Yeah.
Uwe Boll. Oh, yeah, he sort of did what they did for that movie. The producers, right?
Yes, he took advantage of a German tax break for making movies, and that's how he became. He has a lot of money.
He's well off, but he makes what are fairly well known as pretty bad movies.
Worst movies ever made.
And some of the early ones are actually kind of decent, and it seems like I think he discovered it in the same way that the producers did. You know, he tried genuinely to make good movies, but he raised more money than they made, and through the tax loophole, he was able to keep it or count it as a write-off. And he started making more. He realized after a couple movies or so that, hey, I'm gonna make money by making bad movies, and he decided to lean into it. And he's got his supporters too. There are some people who like some awful movies.
Did you hear? Okay,
I like some of them.
I don't know the details of the story, but it's a story I heard a long time ago. I don't know when it took place. I know it was maybe in the 50s, 60s.
Okay.
About a guy. Now, like I say, I don't remember all the details. But okay, there was a guy who wanted to be a filmmaker. So basically, he traveled. He wrote a script. He had a script. Mm-hmm. He would travel to these small towns and tell the people, the townsfolk. I guess this was back.
Oh yeah, this sounds like during the huckster times.
Yeah,
man. Like,
so he would tell the people, hey, I'm a producer. I need to make this movie, but I need a crew. I need a cast. I need people to help me make this movie. I've heard about this.
They've done this scam recently. It's like a known scam that people like sort of reuse.
Yeah, so he would make this movie with the townsfolk.
Yeah.
Get them to put in money
to invest into it. Yeah.
And invest into it to make this movie, and then he would show it, have a big premiere. But then charge the same townsfolk to see the movie that they helped make. Yeah. So he'd make a whole bunch of movie, and the people would be excited. Hey, we made a movie. Then he'd travel to another town and make the exact same movie. So we ended up making.
Switch it up. Then
I heard that the script was the same, just different actors in each thing. So I bet there was little differences.
That's what I'm saying. If he'd have switched it up a little bit, when they caught on to him, he's like, "No, these are all chapters in a story," and then boom. It's like that's how I'm going to make the idea that you sort of that's one of those cons that if you kept it going, he got away with it. I'm pretty sure
from here, and so he has like 20 something different versions of the same movie, and basically that's how he made his living. That's how he got.
I would watch 27 different versions of the right movie. Sometimes that might be kind of interesting. Like everybody has the exact same script for.
I had always wanted to do that as a
Truman Show or something.
Yeah, just to get us a basic script.
It's how different countries and different people and directors make it. Horror version, a comedy version, rom-com, the whole shebang.
It's the same plot, but
somebody shoots it like with a steady cam, even though it's supposed to be like a Truman Show. Like, oh, look at all these hidden cameras. Why is that one guy always filming me with a camera in his hand? It's just sort of weird, and he becomes like the stalker, but he's really just like, oh man, we don't have enough coverage. Go follow him. Pretend to be a stalker.
There is a documentary. Who is it? I think it's.
But the recent version that I'd heard about was there's a guy he says that he's shooting a reality TV show or a game show, and he'll get some investors, and he'll get legit cameramen, and he'll get. Sometimes he'll get like companies, like stores or brands to sponsor basically the pilot and maybe one or two episodes after that. But he never pays anybody. He just ends up pocketing the cash. and he'll keep it going as like the cameraman. You're not paying us. We're not going to show up to work. And he'll just tell the contestants like, oh, okay, yeah, the cameras are hidden now. We finally got them where we needed them. And then the company that's like letting them do shopping or remodeling or whatever they have them doing decide like, this is when is this going to get produced? We haven't heard back from any of your higher ups. We're not letting you in. And he'll just keep moving them, the people around who are supposed to be contestants, and he creates like a mini cult. He gets him to do everything he wants, or have him do like his yard work sometimes. He'll like harass the women, and then eventually they're like, when people decide to leave, you're like, they were booted off the show, and like I saw that on a show, pretty good show called American Greed, and it's focuses on like fraud cases and stuff.
Really?
And so in like the true crime series of like shows coming out, then that's I like it. It's pretty interesting.
So what happened?
I believe what happened was he eventually enough women that he harassed started looking online for other people who he'd done that to or something.
Yeah.
And a few of the companies and other cameramen were trying to get paid for like what he had borrowed or promised. And then they all sort of came together and like found him at once. And I believe that he's in jail now for multiple crimes. Yeah.
That is crazy.
It just went on for so long. It's like that saying, if the lie is big enough, people believe it.
Yeah. Well, have you heard of the 5 Obstructions documentary?
No.
Okay, this is a documentary. Lars von Trier, the director, and Jorgen Leth.
Now that's a name that I like.
It's like an experimental kind of film where Lars von Trier bets Jorgen Leth that he challenges him to remake a movie that he made in 1967 called The Perfect Human. Okay. But each time with a different obstacle or obstruction. I saw the beginning of this. I haven't finished watching it, but it's pretty interesting. Where it's kind of
so interesting you couldn't finish watching it. What was it long? How long is it?
Because I think I started watching it on TV and I wasn't able to finish watching it, and then I couldn't find it on.
So does it actually have each full-length movie in there?
What he does, he takes a segment of his film and remakes it. He doesn't remake the whole film, but a segment. So like that's
interesting.
And I think it's a short film that he.
Is this whole thing actually a documentary?
It's a documentary. And then it includes the short films. Okay, like the Perfect Human movie is a short film lasting 13 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's not that bad.
So it depicts a man and woman, both labeled the perfect human, and in a detached manner, functioning in a white, boundless room as though they were subject to the zoo. So it's kind of like.
This is boring.
It's because it was experimental films.
Oh, okay, we were talking about that in the last podcast. Yeah. It's something new. You can't. It's original.
So then Lars von Trier says, okay, remake this 5 different ways, and the first one is like he must set it in Cuba with no set and like on location, but no shot lasting longer than 12 frames.
Ooh.
So he has to do it like that, and then the other one is second obstruction is he has to remake it in the worst place in the world, but not show that place on screen, and additionally the director himself must play the role of the man.
Okay.
So it's all these like different ways to make it. And
so how did the bet go? Is there money on this?
It was that. What was the? Let's see.
It seems like he's just messing with his friend at this point.
I think it's kind of more like that. Just, okay, the premise is that von Trier created a challenge for his friend, Mr. Leth. And von Trier properties from instruction post von Trier. Okay, and then
I don't know, man. It's that's cool, kind of. It's interesting. I feel like they should remake this documentary into a movie that's entertaining.
Well, they were going to remake this one with Martin Scorsese. Like, the same thing with Martin Scorsese, but it never developed.
You know why? Because Martin Scorsese was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm a legitimate director.
Martin Scorsese was a busy man, but that would be interesting because they were going to get him and Robert De Niro to remake bits of Taxi Driver.
Oh, which would be...
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing. Yeah, that's the one I want to see, but...
Yeah, his character, like, down the road...
Well,
now he's an Uber driver.
Like we're geeking out about it, saying it would be good. But Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver, there's a quote that he says it's not being made because he says it's a terrible idea.
What do writers know about writing?
And then, according to Paul Schrader, he says in Marty's mind, Mr. Scorsese, it never was something that should be done. I understand that part on Martin Scorsese's part, saying that there's no really need to do it because, like the whole remake of Psycho. I guess it's kind of
frame by frame, exactly the same thing.
It's kind of pointless.
It is, but it's beautiful too. It's a very.
But I think you needed somebody like who was it that directed Psycho remake?
Don't remember. But no, like that was actually it still was a good movie. It holds up fairly well. It's just sort of redone for modern times.
But it just proves that that kind of thing is pointless.
Everything's pointless.
You think everything is
pointless? Everything is pointless. You have to discover. You have to find the point yourself. And for some people, it got a lot of people into Psycho, the original, and that was a good stepping stone for better films in general, I think. Sometimes you kind of got to go a little lowbrow to bring people up. You know? And it was a good too. You know what? There's like hundreds of people whose job was that movie, and it like opened up the venues for all these people to really. I mean, it's like a play. How many times is a play redone exactly? And it doesn't take away from the point.
Yeah.
It's it's an experience, and you have to. It's like Romeo and Juliet. You have to rehash it for each generation. You don't always put it in the time period, because the thing is,
I get that.
Do we even know if Shakespeare, when he made Romeo and Juliet, was it set in his era, or did they use sets and costumes from like the Roman times and Greek times and different areas, and just change up the costume and make it different stories? It's the timeless tale kind of thing.
We talked about this with the nostalgia.
They get that nostalgia effect. Yeah. Would the remake of Psycho count as a nostalgia remake?
Because no, I don't think nobody was asking for it. And Psycho itself.
They did Birds too. Didn't they remake Birds exactly?
I don't know about that. I don't think so.
But it wasn't as big, I think, because it's
well, because I mean, if you look at Psycho, I mean, whenever you bring up Psycho, the movie Psycho, people think of the original Scorsese, Hitchcock directed film. It had 3 sequels.
Oh,
I don't know if I know some of them, if not all of them, were directed by
Psychotic, and Psychosis, right?
No, Psycho 2, Psycho 3, Psycho 4.
Really?
And the guy.
He was not as creative with titles, was he?
Mr. Was it Perkins? The guy who played Norman Bates. Wait. He directed. I don't know if he directed all 3 sequels.
Really? Oh,
but he directed at least, I think, the final.
I wonder if that's where Mr. Pinkerton gets his name. Mr. Perkins? He's just like influenced from that.
Pinkerton?
Yeah. From the Red Band remakes or something?
Yeah. Red Letter Media.
Red Letter Media.
Mr. Plinkett. I didn't think about that. I didn't think.
I wonder. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so we won. So he directed the remakes.
The sequels. And then they did the remake. And then now there was a TV show, Bates Hotel.
Yeah, the Bates Hotel. I've heard a lot of good things about that. I heard it's got the right atmosphere. And
it is on Netflix.
Grows,
I've been wanting to go check it out. But I mean, that's something that I guess, most people don't. Like I would say, they think of Psycho, they go back to the original. They don't even think of the sequels, or really even, unless they're fans of the series Bates Motel, they don't even think about that. Really is, I don't know. Do you think of that as a franchise?
100%. People just kind of don't think about it at all. Bates Motel brought a lot of people back to it, but it is an older movie. The director has been dead for a really long time, and unless they're enthusiastically into other movies and media and stuff, they're probably not going to come along it too often. They're watching Transformers remake of The Revenge of the Dark of the Moon. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, giant robots. What can go wrong?
Okay, here's a question for you. What classic movie do you think would be the best to become a franchise?
A franchise? Oh, geez, that's a tough one. Any particular era?
And any classic movie. That's only there's only one movie of.
Jeez. You know what? It's tough to say.
Casablanca?
She gets on that plane and she goes somewhere else. Oh, man. In general, I'm not... All right, so from that era, I'm not as familiar with
any
movies.
era. It could be from the 90s movie.
The thing is, every time I think of one of those movies, I think of the remakes and stuff from it. Like, there's one, The Thing from the Other Planet, which became The Thing, which had a spin-off,
The Thing, called The Thing.
And it was all just The Thing. They never changed the name, even though it was actually kind of a progression.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many. Every time, like I said, they do most of them. Give me your example. What do you think would be a good franchise of a classic movie? Exactly. It's kind of like they sort of do them all already. They have spiritual successors.
I don't know if you call it. Well, this is like a 90s movie, but like something like. No, because that wouldn't work well.
I was about to say The Godfather.
But it is
exactly. Several. Taxi Driver, that's the one they were talking about.
Well, I had heard that there was an idea to make a sequel to Taxi Driver.
Okay.
Where, the original Heat. That's the one I was thinking of, but then I thought, I don't know, because most of the characters don't make it alive.
So, remake it in that world, like...
Not a remake, I'm saying a franchise, like a sequel.
Exactly.
Sequels to
it. Then sequel, yeah, I'd watch that. I mean, they still have to hunt down, was it Val Kilmer's character who got away with the money?
But Heat in itself is a remake. You know that.
I did not. See, that's my exact point. It's like, it's so hard to find originals.
Well, it's the same guy, Michael Mann.
So rude.
I'm sorry, my phone. Twitter,
Is it?
It's a Twitter thing.
No, okay, so go on. Michael Mann.
Michael Mann made a movie called L.A. Takedown, which is basically his first draft. I haven't seen it, but it's the same plot as Heat, just not as kind of the shortened version, the first draft, of it. And then he went and remade it as Heat. with better, bigger name actors and a bigger budget.
Yeah.
But I heard that the first one, LA Takedown's good, but it's not
I'm
great.
still trying to think of a movie that's a classic that has neither been remade or has sequels to it. Nothing's coming to mind.
Gone with the Wind. It has a literary sequel.
Oh yeah, okay, I think I heard about that.
The Wind Done Gone.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
No, yeah, that sounds right. So yeah, that wouldn't really fit
Okay,
either.
something like now let's say To Kill a Mockingbird, which was a great book.
Also had a prequel, and I think there is actually like a sequels in the movie.
In the book, there's no sequel in the movie. There's only one movie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But now that there's a book sequel or book spin-off, because it's actually kind of like
it's sort of a
it's
prequel.
an alternate version of the story.
Isn't it? Because I heard it was like him studying. From what I heard about it, it was his character before he had kids, and he's actually kind of racist in that book, and it shows like where he came from.
It was Harper Lee. It was basically like her first draft of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Because she had to go use a pen. A nom on pleur, a pen name. Wasn't she listed herself as a guy originally?
No, it was Harper Lee.
Harper Lee?
She released it under her real name.
It was really? Oh, I guess it just sounded enough like a guy's name she got published at the time.
Oh, you didn't think there were women?
No, I did. I know there are times that women use a men's name so that they, like J.K. Rowling, and there's.
I wouldn't call that a men's name, but I would call that a unisex name.
It is, but there's so few. I'm gonna get some water. I can't think right now. I've got the heat stroke. This is why we don't film in the daytime.
In the day, because it's so hot.
It is.
Well, it's talking about names and stuff. You know that Jamie Foxx, that's why he changed his name, is because when he was a comedian, he started off as a comedian. Yeah. His name is Eric something.
Really?
And he said that he noticed that all the.
Or did you want to water?
No, I'm good. All the when he would go to clubs and there'd be like open mics.
Yeah.
They would always call all the women comedians first to go on, so he thought he'd con the system, and he changed his name to Jamie Foxx, which is like a unisex name, so that people would just read the name Jamie Foxx and think it was a woman. Say, okay, Miss Jamie Foxx, where are you? You're up, and he'd say, oh, that's me. So he could kind of get a heads up and go on first.
Ah, that's interesting. Kind of did it work?
It did work. Yeah, it did work.
Oh wow.
And then he just kept it as his stage name.
Oh, okay, cool. Like our names.
Like our names, yes.
That's how we're gonna get so famous. I don't know, man. Now you just got me stuck. Okay, where would it go? The Lord of the Flies. Mm-hmm. Following the kids after they get back to normal society.
That would be a great one.
Yeah,
That would be a great
I'm
one.
good at figuring stuff out.
Well, not maybe just at least a sequel.
Oh, you could. Well, the kids didn't go to each other's house. Like, you could turn. There's so many different ways you could go with one of the kids going crazy, trying to track down the other kids. Maybe not a full franchise, but okay.
Give me one moment. I'm gonna step out of front.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would make a solid second movie, and I could see it if you went in with a thriller aspect. Because let's be honest, those are the things that get sequels: are thrillers and action movies and comedies. Each one, you're gonna have like Piggy has the comedy sequence, the other Psycho has like the thriller sequence, and then like the one good kid has the action sequels. It's a thought at least. So you're saying I'm just happy that I found that out.
But so you're saying like take each of the characters and put them in their own movie,
or and like with a bit of
their own kind of style movie. That would be interesting to do that. Mm-hmm. Never thought of doing something like that. Doing it that way.
That's what makes it avant-garde and probably not fun to watch.
Is there a movie that, thinking that way, is there like a movie that you would like take a supporting character and want to see like a prequel just with that character or something like that?
Prequel. Okay.
Like
for both a prequel and us having a franchise, Moby Dick. I see a franchise of Moby Dick, of like again like what goes on after, and I'd like to see the prequel of how did Ishmael. What was he like before he got there?
That would be an interesting take.
Right.
I want to see another good. I remember I saw Master and Commander years ago, and that was such a good movie. And I want to see more movies like that. But I know
there's people on boats. We need movies with people on boats.
I know in the Heart of the Sea was the last one that came out, directed by Ron Howard, but I heard it wasn't that good.
I bet it was good. I bet you it was just like people who don't want to watch a movie where the whale's the enemy right now, and it's basically Moby Dick. It was basically Moby Dick. Yeah. It
was that was based on the real story that inspired Moby Dick.
And it was actually like a terrible situation. I think they cannibalized a guy. Yeah, then he married one of the guys who ate that dude. Married his wife when he got back.
What?
Yeah. It is like that's a true
insane.
story. It is insane. They had to go to a whole court case about it and like say, no, if we didn't, we didn't kill him. He died from drinking too much salt water. None of us drank salt water. Only he did. But it was an accident, and then we ate him. I thought. All right, so
Oh, goodness.
So you want more boat movies?
Well, I would like to see more boat movies.
What
Kinda like
else?
that.
What are some other good boat movies where it's
Well, I
like
guess
old school?
would Pirates of the Caribbean be considered boat movies?
It is boat enough, I guess.
I want to see there's one with Robert Redford called All Is Lost, where
Yeah.
he's all alone in a boat by himself.
And Lost. That sounds
And
horrible.
Lost.
What is boring? Okay, you know what?
Oh.
Castaway sounds boring
Castaway.
too, but it's actually a pretty entertaining movie. So before I knock
Robinson Crusoe, you make a franchise of that.
Heck yeah! More people just falling on the island.
I guess
Like, we need better map makers.
that would be well.
I don't know. Yeah, let's go away from the islands for a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some other? I don't even know, man. Are we so far out of good content that we have to say what would need a remake or reboot?
Well, I mean,
alternate
we're
universe?
talking about stories, books, or other movies that would be adapted to movies. I mean, we can always make original franchise
Yeah.
ideas.
Franchises saying all this word franchises make me want to eat French fries really bad. I don't know. Let's change the subject. This is that.
That
What
kind of
else
went
was-
over, yeah.
Huh?
Well, we're on 45 minutes, so let's do another 15-minute conversation about something else.
Okay, cool.
What do you got?
What about? We talked about food. We talked about goods. We talked about Is that door open back there?
No, it's the window.
Ooh, this is
It
right.
shines light. It looks like a door's open, yeah, but it's just the window.
Overton Window. Have you heard about that?
No, what's that?
I don't remember exactly what it is, but what I think the Overton Window, that's what people will politically accept given certain circumstances, and it's raised basically like, okay, we'll give away certain rights because we think we're getting like safety in return.
Okay.
And it sort of raises and lowers depending on the situation. Like basically if we're in a super safe time and we don't expect anything bad to happen, then we assume we don't want people messing with our, privacy and security and interacting with us at all. Basically we want all the freedoms we can get. But whenever things are dangerous, the Overton Window changes its position, and we expect we are willing to give away more freedoms in exchange for security. That's what I think it is.
Okay. That's an interesting idea.
It's also kind of boring and dry. I don't want to get into it.
Okay, you know what? One thing that we're talking about last night after we recorded the podcast, we were talking about like stuff that scared us.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember after we dropped you off, Joe and I were talking, and we were like freaked out because you live out in the middle of nowhere, and it's pretty creepy,
It's
especially
scary.
at night. And I mentioned that I wouldn't give you a ride home until if we stayed up late recording podcast, I'd wait till the sun came up. It's so freaky. But I was talking to Joe about stuff that scares me, and I said one of the reasons, because he said he's kind of freaked out, and like I started just joking around with him and kind of trying to scare him. And he said, "Don't do that. You're gonna."
That's terrible.
Oh, because he brought up that I told him a story when he was younger about what was it? I told him some scary story, and he said that. Oh no, that I showed him the beginning of the Twilight Zone movie.
Okay.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Where Dan Aykroyd and Al
this guy's
Brooks-
Paul. The guy he's talking about is our production assistant.
That I had either told him or showed him the opening to the Twilight Zone movie where Dan Aykroyd and Al Brooks.
Oh, yeah, want to see something
Albert
scary?
Brooks, they're driving and he says, "You want to see something scary?" And he turns into this like goblin and eats the other guy. And
it's a silly looking goblin too, but it surprises you. You're not expecting Dan
creepy,
Aykroyd to be a monster.
So our production assistant said that since I don't remember when I told him, so I don't know how old young
Dan
he was.
Aykroyd.
No, it freaked him out. He said it scarred him.
Whoa.
I don't,
Well, it's because the age. You scarred a young
I guess,
boy.
but I told him that the reason that I used to be very fearful as a child and have irrational fears. I think that was one thing we talked about was having irrational fears.
Fears are rational to the person having them.
Yeah, but so one way that I was able to overcome it is to say, if I can create something or tell a story that scares somebody else as much as I'm scared, not to be cruel to the other person and not to be mean and to say like I'm better than you or okay, now I feel more powerful.
That's exactly what it is.
No, it's the thing is like if I can create or say something that scares the wits out of you, then that kind of thing's okay, then why is this thing that's scaring me so powerful on me? And it's kind of like I try to get people like my little brothers and sisters when they're scared of the dark.
This is going to be a bad story.
No,
scared of the dark, I just like put a towel over their head and then like
No, I don't do anything like
that.
But it's like taking them out in the dark and just saying, okay, sit here with me. Let's just sit in the dark. And I know it's creepy, but I want you to see. But I want you to know that there's nothing that's gonna harm. Nothing irrational that's gonna harm you. Like it's not gonna. There's no murdering clowns gonna come out through the dark.
But we do have scorpions and spiders and snakes.
Well, that's the thing. I think we should be afraid of stuff like that. But teach kids. I think sometimes when we're kids, we're scared of all the, Pennywise the clown.
I'm afraid of a bird dropping a snake on me. I live in the country.
You're scared of what?
A bird dropping a snake on me. They're just walking out, and it's like, it's trying to eat a snake, flying above my head. Snake gets out of its claws, and boom, just drops on me.
See, now that's unlikely, but that's probable.
And it's happened, too. Or, like, out of a tree. Yeah. That has also happened. I'm sure they don't try to do that when snakes go up. They don't want to just jump right down. Yeah. But the idea that could happen, it's like, that would ruin my day. We got bad snakes down here.
Yeah, well, our neighbor sold my dad a van. And he went to check out the engine. He opened up the hood and there was a snake just sitting on there. Luckily, it turned out it was like a rat snake, so it was not poisonous. But still,
nobody wants that.
Creep them out,
Snake pissing around.
Yeah. So I'm saying, okay, what I was saying, it's kind of like how I overcame my fears was to realize that I could create something that could be just as scary as what's scaring me. Kind of that mentality.
The best way I overcame my fears is to just sort of squish them down and ignore them.
When
I'm presented with the situation where I have to face it, go the other direction.
Do you remember that story that you told me once that you were sitting in your living room and you looked out the window and you saw a white figure that was standing outside, waving at you?
No, it wasn't. It was two. I heard. All right, so this is what it was. I was in my TV room, and I heard the dogs barking outside, and I could hear something kind of big moving around. It sounded like somebody walking through the grass. So I look out the window, and I think I just kind of saw it looked like somebody was standing there. I don't even think I saw that. I just heard movement. Well, anyway, I go to the front door. I open it up, and on the either side of my gate, I see two guys without heads. And they've got tentacle arms, and they're both waving me out, synchronized to come outside the gate. And I pause and I freak out, and I'm staring at them, and it's I think I lost my mind a little bit. It's I can't be seeing this, so I'm staring at them, trying to figure out what's going on. And it's
they were white figures, right?
Well, no, I didn't. Not white. They were just pale. Because they had the light from our security lights, kind of orange tinted, hitting them. I'm trying to stare at them, trying to get wait for them to blur out or my vision to straighten up or to figure out what it is. And I'm just standing there, kind of in shock, wanting to run back to my room. But this is so the novelty effect of seeing this crazy thing in front of me is so strong that I'm staring. I couldn't move, and a part of me is thinking, "Oh, you're gonna die. You should go back." The other part of me is no, man, what is this? What is this? And I'm staring at it. They're synchronizing, and then the synchronicity starts breaking a little bit.
So they're waving with tentacle arms, you said, right?
I don't mean waving at me. It's they had their arms by the side, and they were just sort of coming this way. It was clearly directional.
That is creepy.
Well, very creepy. And then as they began to move, and I heard, moo, I realized what it was cows had gotten into my yard because I live in the country. They were eating the grass on either side of the fence, and because they were under some kind of trees, and the way the light hit them, it was only hitting the butts,
the backside,
and the backside from an angle that only let me see. It gave them the outline of a guy. I could only see their arm, and it looked like the tail was the arm, basically. And the way because the human mind looks for the shape of people and everything, so that's what it made it. Familiar shapes, and that's what it put it as. It was until they started moving, and I was oh man, that. I don't know. I felt ridiculous. I felt relieved, and I still felt kind of terrified because these are still big animals and they could hurt me. But oh man, for that second where aliens existed, it was wow, ghosts or whatever. I don't know what my brain did not know what to make of it.
Do you think that old stories of people seeing things could have been something like that, or are they just something that?
Well, most of them have to be. I think. Yeah. The jackalope. It's a rabbit with antlers.
Antlers. I had actually the first time that I noticed I saw something like that was we went to an older lady's house, I think for a prayer meeting or something.
Yeah.
And she had a picture of a jackalope, and then she actually had the stuffed head with it's on the how you put the deer heads. It was a little rabbit, and I looked at it and that's so freaky. What is that? I didn't know. I hadn't heard the story. I didn't even know what.
Okay,
that was a thing.
You want to know what real jackalopes are?
Mutated rabbits?
Kind of. Basically, what it is there's this particular type of, like it's a mole or a type of infection that their body can't fight off right, and it tends to especially affect like the head, and it'll grow basically just start growing moles, and they'll come out of different angles, and they're kind of bumpy on their own, so they kind of, the closest thing you could compare them to, especially at the time, would be antlers. And sometimes they will come up on the head and sort of be more antler shaped, but they can come at, they're not usually, even. They're kind of all over the place, and they look pretty gross. I think they're benign for the most part to the rabbit, unless they like obstruct something or they can get caught on stuff, but that's where it came from, supposedly. But seeing that and then seeing a jackalope, you can see how somebody would find that in nature, try and explain it. When they say they looked like antlers, somebody just thinks of pulling antlers right off a deer, putting it on, and that's what they describe it in the line of telephone of explaining it to other people.
Well, I heard like even when they, people started finding dinosaur fossils, they would basically kind of put them back together wrong, and they claim that it was
giants and dragons,
giants and dragons, and then stuff like the narwhal. Some people say they find the skeleton, and they believe that's why, like, the idea of a unicorn.
Yeah, because you got this big horn. But the horn is huge. Like, it's like, what is it, like 5 or 6 feet long?
Yeah, it's a huge horn.
Yeah, so they just assume that unicorns are giant. Yeah, I think so. It is actually like a tooth that just protrudes.
Yeah.
A protrudy tooth. Yeah, and a bunch of stuff. Also, like elephant bones in places where they didn't know what elephants are, because they'd be bones and not rock fossils. They would assume those were giants, because an elephant's skull, the nasal cavity is really big in the center, and then it has like tiny little holes on the side where its eyes are, but that's actually they would think that was where the ears are, and they would assume that this is a skeleton of a giant. And that's where Cyclopses came from, supposedly. Now, that being said, there are people born with certain genetic mutations that may give them. Like, there was a kitten that it was missing was it like the sinus cavity or something, and it just had one giant eye in the middle of its head. And I was like, if you run into that, okay, you're not knowing what it is, Cyclopses are real.
There was a recent post that I saw in Indonesia or somewhere, an Asian country, where a goat had given birth to basically a deformed baby goat.
Yeah.
But it had human characteristics.
Whoa! Oh, I saw that picture.
You saw the picture where
it
like the
terrifying.
head. Yeah, it was terrifying, and it looked like a half goat, half human. But they're saying, it's not a half goat, half human. It's just a deformed goat.
Yeah, the human characteristics. This is what it was. Basically, it had no fur, and it was so mutated that basically it looked like it had shoulders, and its spine was misshapen. So it was sort of like still in semi-fetal position, and we just attributed it as human characteristics when it was just deformed and so deformed we gave it a look. Yeah, and it looked gross. I feel bad for it. I feel bad for that whole thing.
And it was born dead, right? It was still born.
I don't remember. Did not look that far into it because it was sad and scary.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's where our myths come from.
Yeah. And
except for those few times. That few times are straight up, real, like centaur came up to a guy and it was like, no one will believe you. That one time.
Well, that's a funny thing. My brothers and sisters were asking me the other day if mermaids were real. Because they had heard somewhere that they heard mermaids are real.
Oh,
and I was trying to explain to them.
And they did a Discovery Channel show on it, and people had to call in. It was because they semi-presented it as real. They would post like, this hasn't been substantiated, instead of just saying this is make-believe, to like get people more into it.
And I heard the original thing was like sailors would see like basically just dolphins swimming.
Narwhal? Wasn't it that porpoise? Wasn't it a porpoise?
Porpoise. Yeah. And it looks like a human. I don't know. I really don't.
You know what it is? It looks like a human whenever you're at sea for so long. You haven't seen other people around you. You probably got sun sickness. You're running out of. You got scurvy.
Scurvy because you have enough vitamin C.
You're probably losing your eyesight. Everything looks like a woman to you at that point. So yeah.
Is it the same thing as drunk vision?
Maybe that was the thing. People are like, you know what? Sailing is awful. We need to tell them there's something great. There's it's like that. There's mermaids out at sea that want to talk to you. Really? Sure are. And then when they're doing back-breaking work in the middle of like the ocean, they're like, well, where are all the mermaids? And it's like, oh, well, shush, and keep working, otherwise they won't come out and talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's harsh, but it's like, yeah, that's how people are. People are jerks. Then they'll tell them too, like, oh yeah, we're gonna pay you so much money, and then you get there and it's like, oh, where's the rest of my money? It's like, oh, there's room, there's board, and you didn't find any mermaids. We got to charge you for that. It's like, I didn't know. It was just a whole other add-ons. Being a sailor was awful. As much as we were hyping it up, you know where the bathroom was? It was off the side of the ship for everything. Awful. And the food they had to eat then too, awful.
Yeah.
Because they could only use everything had to either be pickled or dried, and you could only carry so much of it. And clean water too. That's another one. Yeah. Drinking salt water, very bad idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess talking about the irrational fears and kind of going back to that, do you now as an adult have any irrational fears? Something that really terrifies you?
To me.
Like what?
No, man. Could you call thinking about was it doomsday or an apocalypse of fear? And it's it doesn't even bother me as much anymore. I'm just at a point in my life where it's nothing I can do to stop it. But I don't even know if it's most likely nothing like that will happen.
Yeah.
So I've kind of overcome that. But even then, would that be considered with people who do have that fear? Because it's on a lot of people's minds. We got the doomsday prepper stuff. Everybody thinks about zombie apocalypse, and that's as a joke. But it's on people's minds. Would you consider the end of the world an irrational fear?
Well, I know a woman who was a nurse at a hospital.
Yeah.
They did a whole test where it was like a fake epidemic, where actors would come in and kind of make sure the staff was prepared for, a biological attack.
Oh, okay.
But they also went and did a zombie apocalypse kind of scenario. And I was, are you serious that they actually did that? And they did that just in case. Or anything that would resemble a zombie apocalypse scenario, any biological.
I guess that's a good way to keep things in a general of, you have to keep the patient isolated, be careful about them, being violent. I could see that, how it could prepare you for other things.
And the one thing that she said was that they realized they weren't prepared, really. Oh. They could take care of, certain stuff like that, but if it was something kind of like a zombie apocalypse, it would be out of their hands.
I guess that the example would be a good comparison if you're not prepared for what you're not prepared for.
I guess so.
Somebody comes in with what is it what do they call it, Ebola, the hemorrhagic fevers, or things that make you bleed out constantly. I bet you they would have the same trouble with that. They're just not set up to deal with it. You have to constantly clean everything to death afterwards. You have to the minimal contact. The people who are treating them have to be isolated.
Yeah.
So I could see that. But so my question stands: would that be considered an irrational fear? Because people are clearly testing for it. And even though they're saying they're not testing for that thing, they're using it as a way to test for other things. Not irrational. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it irrational. I mean, it depends on if you're just saying in general, I'm afraid that this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's irrational. But I think if you say, I don't know.
You have to define the question.
Because maybe if you're getting prepared for something like that, that's a rational way to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A rational way to act.
That question needs a little better definition, I think.
Yeah.
But scary stuff, in general, the whole pandemic thing.
Yeah.
Of something that's just so alien to us, it really cuts through the population. And the thing, people always assume it'll kill you, but just knocking out enough people from work could be highly destructive to the economy, and people would die from the lack of infrastructure. That could be way more damaging. That wouldn't be more damaging than actually people dying, but it would have a big impact. Mm-hmm. Just like a super flu that hit everybody. That'd be bad.
That would be bad.
Very unpleasant too.
Yeah.
I think.
All right.
Well, should we call it a day?
I think we should call it a day. I think that's a good episode.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for listening. Hopefully, if we do more of these, we'll have a little more energy. Maybe we'll stick to the night schedule.
Night schedule probably works.
Let us know if you watch this, what you think. And check out our Patreon at the Roman Road, or search on Patreon, the Roman Roads Podcast. Please donate what you can. We highly appreciate it.
Thank you for any and all support.
Yeah, check us out on Twitter at Roman Roads Podcast. Yes. The YouTube at the Roman Roads Podcast Show, and SoundCloud too.
On SoundCloud, we're going to upload the audio-only podcasts at SoundCloud at the Roman Roads Podcast.
Thanks again. Catch you later.
Thank you. See ya.